Hello. It's August 11th today, and we're in Nehemiah chapter 1. And this is one of those things again. I just love the beginning of Nehemiah. There's you get a good sense of who Nehemiah is as a person through reading through his book, and one of the things I love here at the beginning of the book is his reaction to what's been going on in Jerusalem. The walls are broken down, the gates have been burned with fire. And it leads him to verse 4 where he says this: When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Right now, I'm teaching through the Sermon on the Mount as well, and Jesus there talks about not letting your fasting be seen before other people in order to be praised by them, but let it be before God, and He will reward you because He sees the things that you do in secret. So, obviously, Nehemiah tells us here that he's been fasting and mourning for days and praying, but it was all done before God and the God of heaven. And then he breaks out into prayer, and I wonder a little bit about whether this prayer is a result of those days of mourning and fasting and praying. And this is kind of the end of it. And obviously, sometimes it takes us a while to actually get into a mode of prayer. Brad Hunt used to always say, pray until you've prayed. And I'm sure he got it from somebody else, but that's kind of the journey that it takes with prayer. Sometimes it takes a while before you're actually praying. Again, last night we were just teaching through the Lord's Prayer and focusing on God's glory first, on who He is, then rearranges your priorities and the things that you ask for. And so this is what I think Nehemiah has come to after he's been fasting and praying for some days, as he's actually entering into true prayer with God. He says, "The Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps His covenant of love with those who love Him and keeps His commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins of we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly toward you, and we have not obeyed the commands, decrees, and laws you gave your servant Moses. Remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses, saying, If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commandments, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name." There's a lot about prayer that I think we could take from this. First, he comes to God with an expression of who he is, his greatness and awesomeness, and his covenant keepingness. And then he asks for his petitions here. And he causes God to remember his covenant by stating it again for him. And I think that's rehearsing it for himself as well. He wants to return to the Lord. He wants his people to be returned to the Lord out of their exile, not just physically, but also spiritually. And so all of this comes to a head, of course, at the very end of the chapter. It just has those very simple words: I was cupbearer to the king. And there's obviously some foreshadowing there that Nehemiah himself is going to be a part of the answer to his prayer, that he has been put in a position where God can use him. And that is not just put in a position like his job, but he's been put in a position of humility, of dependence on God, and he understands his spiritual availability now and what God has called him to. And so he is ripe for the task that God would have him to do. And I think that's a beautiful reflection of how we should be in front of the Lord too. Sometimes it takes us a while to get there, but we've got to take that time in prayer and mourning and fasting sometimes to get to that point. All right, that's it for today.